Good evening. It's Laura Donnelly from Dancing with Ease, Body Brain Balance, here with day 148 of Strange and Interesting Times. So, just because sometimes I add numbers together and kind of compress them. So 1 and 4 is 5, and 5 and 8 is 13, and 1 and 3 is 4. And 4, if you think of a 3-legged stool and a 4-legged stool, a four-footed chair is more stable than 3. And so I like to think of 4 as kind of a good number for balance. And you have, the 4 cardinal directions for orienting yourself in space. And, if you look at a clock, hey, Mary, great to see you. If you look at a clock, a lot of times, sometimes they will just put 4 numbers, 12 and 6 and 3 and 9. So this dividing things into 4 is kind of a stable idea. So that's just a fun game that I sometimes play. Then I was talking about being empathetic and how empathy, that if you are kind and caring and sensitive to other people's emotions, you can easily be overwhelmed by other people's emotions. Now, if you start out as an empathetic child, a lot of times you can be overwhelmed by emotions and not have learned to sift out what are your real feelings and what are somebody else's feelings. And then this makes a really kind of confusing mush inside of you, and especially inside your mind. Because, as I'm so fond of saying all the time, we are all connected. So what we feel influences our body. You know how, like, when you get frightened, or like, Jaws is like really ancient, but that music, when they would play that music in the movie theater, that the shark is going to come out of the water and get somebody, my heart would start to beat faster because I was scared. So we have a physical, neurological response to fear. We have a mental response to fear. We can remember all the times we were afraid before in a similar situation, or we can remember the times that we were a little frightened by this same kind of situation before, and we got ourselves out of the fear. The other thing, I've talked about emotions kind of like water. People think of emotions as water. Hey, Sandy, great to see you today. Emotions are fluid and they're changing. And you know how water conducts electricity? I sort of think that's a little bit how emotions transfer from person to person, like fluidly through the energy fields around us. So think about, just think about if you were in grade school and you had a teacher who was always unhappy and frustrated and angry, and they would walk into the room and kind of stomp, 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 and how everybody in the room kind of went, what can I do not to make this worse, right? What can I do to keep things calm? A lot of times children are like this. They sense a lot of fluctuation in emotions in the grown-ups around them, and then they try to do things to relieve the buildup of emotional tension, whether it's by being a jokester, doing something cute and funny, helping. My big deal was helping. That's how I tried, and still today, try to calm a situation down. If somebody's getting wrapped up in a situation, a little breathless, a little bit overworked, overwhelmed, I just try to be calm. I try to say, what do you need? Can I take a piece of this overwhelm off your plate? But I try to do it consciously, not unconsciously. As a child, I did it unconsciously all the time. And people would feel better when I was around. and they wouldn't know why, but I was kind of taking off excess emotional charge. Yeah, I think, Mary, you're right. Oldest girl ends up often being the big helper in the family. And then sometimes I didn't know what to do with this energy. I didn't know how to discharge it, but the other people felt better. So they didn't know why. And the other thing about this is everybody has the feelings they have because they're related to them. And they may need to be processed or worked through in some way. I don't know how that person needs to do that. If I just wholesale take away all of the excess energy, emotional energy that that other person is building up, that may be great for the instant because it keeps peace in the instant. But it's not great for me, and it's not great for the other person, because the other person will just get that upset again about a similar situation with different people, different events, different things. The things that we have emotionally, that we are emotionally susceptible to, that's what I would call it, like having a cold. And yesterday I was kind of talking about anger, and I'm emotionally susceptible to anger. It's an energy I understand and know and feel like I can control, manipulate, use. Sadness, not so much. I don't feel like I have that much understanding of sadness in order to be able to manipulate it, use it, and control it in my life. Happiness, pretty good. Pretty good with happiness. Been practicing with that a lot lately. So, you can't make somebody else feel something. And nobody can make me feel anything anymore. When I was a kid, I would have a reaction to the emotions of people around me. And what else about emotions? Emotions kind of come in colors. They come in physical feelings. They don't always come in words. And one of the areas where I had the most challenges was when I would have an emotional flow. It's like the emotions in the room would flow past me, and I would have an understanding of what those emotions were: fear, anger, frustration, happiness, whatever. And but I wouldn't necessarily know they were mine or someone else's, but I just kind of like walk into it, like walking into that cloud, that misty cloud of emotion that I talked about a few days ago. And I would be kind of like all in this. And then instead of being true to their emotion, the adults I was around would try to protect me from something that they knew that was upsetting to them, very upsetting to them, and that they thought would be very upsetting to me. So they thought it better for me not to know the facts. But I already knew the essence of the facts because of my response to the emotional situation that I walked into. So, sometimes I would just go, what's going on? And people say, oh, nothing, everything's going to be fine. Okay, that is my least favorite sentence in the world. Even though everything is always going to be fine. When people, especially women, say it, oh, everything is going to be fine, and they have that up the hair tight in their voice, that means nothing is ever going to be the same as it ever was. That's just what that means. So as I got older, and when I got to live by myself, okay, this was pretty awesome, living by yourself. Then there you are, stuck with all of your own emotions. If someone leaves their socks in the living room and you want to get mad, oh, that someone was you. And so you have to get mad at yourself for leaving the socks in the living room. And then you start to see how much energy you might have put out getting mad at people about silly things because you do silly things. And you're like, oh, so either I can put my socks away or I can not get mad about it. No big deal. I got those two basic choices, and so I can deal with those. But then also living alone or spending time alone, one of the things I love to do is drive in my car by myself on the empty highway. Because then I can kind of sort things out. So how things are for me is kind of clustered in a ball. Sometimes a lot of things that are similar kind of get grouped together. And it takes me a little while to unravel the knot or the ball of string or the yarn or whatever it is and sort out the individual things. And when I'm alone, nobody interferes with that. I don't get a flow of their feelings or emotions. They don't react to how I am working on my little ball of stuff, which maybe it's not too nice to be around. And so I'm able in some solitude to deal with that. Then when I have a new idea, I can take it out in the world and talk to friends about it and see what they thought. Is this how the world flows for you? Is this how emotions seem for you? So one of the really important things is to notice what happens. Notice if you have a spontaneous uprising of emotion, which sometimes happens. Notice what happens to your body. How does your body respond to that emotion? Does it lift up? Does it pull down? Neither one is better or worse than the other. What you want to know is what is your body's kind of initial and native reaction to that emotion. And then you can make some choices about what you want to do. If you're with other people and you're not sure if this feeling that you suddenly are having is yours or someone else's in your close proximity, the first thing I do is I excuse myself and I go to the restroom by myself. And I'm like, okay, what's me and what's the other person? And especially if I care about people and I'm close to other people, I feel deeply for them, and I, what do people call this? People call it boundaries. See, I can't even remember the word. You know, my boundaries are fairly porous and fluid, but now because I have been paying attention and I know how I feel when I'm off balance. And I know that if I scan for ease, I can come back on balance. I don't feel anymore like I have to have a rigid boundary that keeps other people out, keeps out other feelings, keeps out other ideas. I'm not in danger of being swept away anymore. As a young person, I told you I had a roller coaster up and down, and go over here and a big excitement, go over here, big trauma, go over there. Oh, problem, you know, whatever. You know, it was an interesting way to live and tiresome also. It's tiresome. And so now I can feel sooner. I can feel much sooner because I've been paying attention to this a while. And before, you know, it was like driving a car, and I would when I was young, and I wouldn't even know I was off balance till I'm like sitting in a field in the car upside down, hanging by my seatbelt, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm really far off my path, and I actually have had a wreck with my car. And then because I had these cool dreams, and my car represents my soul and my dreams, really seriously, this was not helpful for me, energetically, emotionally, spiritually. So then, you know, I get myself righted back up, get my car back on the road, start going again. And like maybe the next time I drive over there and I get on the shoulder, and I'm like, suddenly my tire's falling off the shoulder and it's bouncing in the grass, and I'm like, oh shoot, I'm off the road, and I can pull myself back on. Then pretty soon, by paying attention, when I start to drift over there and I hit the brrr on the road, the side of the shoulder, I'm like, oh, getting to the shoulder, come back into the road. And now I can be driving, and I notice when I just start to lean a little bit to the sideline, and I can correct. And I notice when I lean a little bit to the center line, and I can correct. And so I can have a lot of movement, and I can correct without getting thrown off balance. So far off balance. And I have a method to get back if I do get knocked completely off my tightrope, whatever it is. If I'm walking on the tightrope and somebody bounces it and I, fall off, well, I have a way to get back up and get on again and go forward again. So observation and awareness are the first steps to starting to sort this out. But the other thing, as I was sharing with a friend the other day, is what if you don't think about being overwhelmed by other people's energy or feelings, but you think that they give you information? And what if you imagine that you're inside of like a waterfall, kind of an energetic waterfall? And so that if people kind of toss their emotions at you, because there are a lot of emotions running around out there, like you go places and people are all masked up and they're frightened and everything, and that, but it's emotions, it's water, it's connective, it's fluid, and you have this kind of waterfall all around you, going down into the ground, grounding you into the earth. And so when those people's emotions come to you, they catch up in the waterfall and they go right down. And you can see them because the water is clear. And you can have compassion for that person. And you don't have to join them in their emotional upset. So you have all the tools that and all the information that empathy helps you have in the world. But you don't have to have the negative side effects. I often think of there was this, I'm ancient. There was an ancient Star Trek episode about a planet of people who were very empathetic, but they could touch somebody's injury, then the injury would show up on them, and then they would be able to heal the injury on themselves, and the other person would also be healed. So they would take the injury off of the person, and then they would heal it in themselves. And the first person would be well, and the special person from the special planet would have a little, this was not easy, was not comfortable, but they recovered and they were fine. So the story was Dr. McCoy. They gave Dr. McCoy, the people, whoever were controlling things, gave Dr. McCoy an illness that was fatal to these empathetic people. And this person who was it's a story. So it's a myth, and it has she is the person, and how she responds with her empathetic skills will determine what these other aliens who are overseeing their planet, how they deal with them in the future. So whatever, something. But then they give him this disease that is not fatal to humans, but really, really uncomfortable. But it is fatal to these empathetic people. And so they're wanting her to actually kill herself to save him. So I draw the line there. And so did Dr. McCoy. He argued passionately that she was willing to do that, and therefore she didn't have to do that all the way. All they needed to know is that she was brave enough to confront this disease that should be fatal to her. And then, of course, because they who were doing the experiment, whatever, those people were able to remove the disease from both people. So it had a happy ending. My childhood was filled with happy endings, sort of, after big trauma. But this is part of the thing with empathy is if you take it off of the other person and you process it, the energy of the feelings and the emotions, the other person doesn't get the learning from those things. And as an empathetic person, sometimes it's really, really hard to see somebody you care about struggling with something that you know you could fix or resolve for them, but it's not yours to fix or resolve. And they need the experience. And so to be present, like with your own waterfall all around you, to understand. There's a great cartoon going around. It's a Winnie the Pooh cartoon about not needing to say anything, but just sitting beside your person who is maybe grieving or feeling something else. You just are present with them. Not reacting to their emotional state or the emotional charge in the air, and not trying to fix it, because trying to fix things is both a response and a reaction. If it's a default, it's a reaction. Sometimes if you're present, that's all that's needed to help somebody else sort out their stress and their problem. So that's my thoughts on empathy and connecting with other people, not being overwhelmed by other people's feelings and emotions, not being not being open in such a way that it's damaging to yourself, because that really doesn't help anybody. So if you found that interesting, please share. If you have thoughts or questions, please put them in the comments. And I'll see you tomorrow for day 149. A long time.